everybody, welcome to Capital of Combat. The name says it all. I'm Hakeem Branch.
Rob Jarrell.
And today we're going to recap this past Saturday's this past weekend's, because we're going to talk about Friday too. But it was a great weekend for fights.
Oh yeah.
We had boxing cards on Friday and Saturday. We actually had Glory Kickboxing too. We didn't talk about that, but it happened and it was on my DVR, so I was like, score. Saturday we had two very good, very competitive title fights, and we had mixed martial arts in the form of UFC, and then that was a great card as well. So that's going to be on another video though.
All right. Today
we're just going to talk about the boxing, and we're going to start with Friday and just work it all the way through. So Friday night we had Richard Comey and Robert Easter fighting for a vacant 135 title, which was the IBF. And that fight was fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
We did say it was going to be a good fight. We had two guys who were undefeated, who did not want to lose, who came in there to prove a point in front of a raucous crowd, and we got something nice. Go ahead, Rob.
All right, so Richard Comey is out of Ghana. He was undefeated, probably hasn't had quite the greatest competition coming out of Ghana, and I think he fought a lot in the UK. But nonetheless, in looking at his fights, he had some skill, had some power, and liked to fight more from the outside, but he was more a power puncher. We had Robert Easter, who had a great, his last outing was a great knockout versus
Argenis Mendez.
Yes, and
he put him to sleep.
And he's under About Billions, Adrian Broner's brochure company.
Yeah.
And he is a tall, very tall, he's at 5'11", lightweight, out of Ohio. And from what I could see, he liked to fight on the inside, kind of like to fight with that Philly shell, or whatever you want to call it. Plenty of names for it. He's very fast and he does have power. In the first round, we got great action, but
great exchanges.
Great exchanges. But I think Robert Easter found out that I can't fight this guy on the inside, because he got hit with some hellacious shots. And I was like, he can't do this. I texted Hakeem. I was like, we just said he needs to adjust. And what does he do? He adjusts by establishing a jab, using that length, and tagging Comey from the outside. Didn't matter, because Comey was still skilled enough. In those exchanges, he at times landed the harder shots. The guys were hurt multiple times throughout the fight.
He also countered the jab very well.
That's right. He threw a great lead right hand and a right hand over the jab.
Yes.
So we got a great fight. Robbie Easter pulled it out. He was knocked down for the first time in his career.
Yeah.
Very close. It looked like he touched the canvas. He buckled and touched the canvas.
I don't think he touched it.
I don't think he touched it, but it could have been. It was really quick.
Yeah. And, the judges in there, split-second decision. It did come very close. The only way that I felt it didn't touch was because I watched the replay. Watching it live, I was like, hey.
I did too.
Let it go. And, the judges don't have, not the judges, but the refs don't have instant replay, so you got to let it ride.
But both of these guys were hurt. I mean, and they showed some great will, because they would buckle, but they would not fall.
Yeah.
Either guy. And I mean, it was doing the Y2T all over the place, and they would not go down.
Yeah, that shows that they were in shape. They got iron wills, and they need to be commended for that, because they got hit with some hellacious blows, like Rob said. And when you buckle like that and you don't go down and then come back fighting, that's amazing. So, like we said, now we're waiting on the 135 picture to clear up a little bit more. It's starting to get heavy again. It thinned out for a little bit, but now we got a lot of young up and coming guys. We got Jose Pedraza fighting there. I think he has a belt.
Gervonta Davis, Tevin Farmer, it's some other names that I can't think of. Is Jorge Linares still a lightweight?
He is.
And Mikey Garcia is moving down. Yep. So it's going to be an exciting, interesting division right now. I'm kind of excited for, especially with Mikey moving down. Tevin Farmer had a rough start to his career, starting to look better. He's been undefeated in his last umpteen fights. Couldn't tell you how many. And of course, Gervonta Davis with Mayweather Promotions. He's really been going out there and making a name for himself.
Yep. So The main event really was pretty inconsequential. It was Danny Jacobs versus Sergio Moore in a rematch of their fight from last year where Moore hurt his leg and was unable to continue after they traded knockdowns. This one was all Jacobs the entire time.
That's right.
Had 5 knockdowns, and him and Golovkin shared the WBA belt. He said he was going to call him out. He did, but you guys know personally I don't care about that until they put his name on the line on the contract. So until that happens, I really don't want to hear what he has to say.
But it was really weird to see Moore come back. He still had that footwork. He still had some really good speed, throws punches from weird angles. But in the first 1 or 2 rounds, you can kind of tell he was shaking off some ring rust. And one of the commentators, who's the commentator?
Tarver.
Yeah, Antonio Tarver mentioned that it looked like he was shadow boxing because he would throw a punch and measure. And I'm like, those punches aren't landing. Who are you fighting, the air or Danny Jacobs? But then he kind of settled in and landed some decent shots. He landed some where I think Danny Jacobs was trying to show that his punches didn't bother him. Personally, I wouldn't do that. I don't do that. If you hit me, you have to earn it.
Yeah, I'm not in that school of thought of letting people hit you. I think it's stupid. But especially when you have people who are trained to hurt you, like they can't hurt you. So
right.
Why give them the opportunity to do that? We're gonna talk about that more later. But so he did call out Golovkin, and like I said, once his name goes on the dotted line, we'll talk about that. Until then, there's nothing to talk about.
Moving on.
Saturday, we had 2 great title fights. Once again with 4 undefeated fighters.
That's right.
Putting belts on the line, putting their undefeated records on the line, doing what we like to see in boxing, which is daring to be great. And first up was Golovkin and Brook.
They had the early broadcast at the O2 Arena.
Yes, it came on in our time zone at 5:30 in the afternoon. We know there are people all around the world watching this, so it just happened Saturday afternoon. Well, Saturday night for some people, because in the UK it was at night. It happened Saturday. So, getting into that, we had Kell Brook, who was moving up from welterweight, and Gennady Golovkin, who is the consensus #1 middleweight. He's not the middleweight champ, which always bothers me when Michael Buffer announces him as the champ. It's like, you know he's not the champ. Why are you doing that? That is disrespectful. We know who the champ is, but, I guess HBO has their agenda, even though the guy who is the champ is fighting next week on that network.
Yeah, but because he moved down and doesn't have any plans to move back up, they just need to vacate that.
Yeah, but until he does, he is the champ.
That's neither here nor there. Right now, it is the consensus by many pundits that he is the man at 160.
Yeah, he is the man after the man. Like, if once he is completely not an afterthought, he is the guy. But let's talk about the fight. In our preview video, check that out if you haven't seen it. We mentioned Kell Brook's speed. We mentioned that he made the weight well. And we figured that he would make the fight competitive until he would ultimately be stopped. That is what we got. But the how and the what's is what makes this fight interesting. Going into the first round, we got the Golovkin that we were used to. We got the Golovkin working behind the jab, throwing nice crisp power shots. He hurt Kell Brook to the body, it seemed.
To the body, then he landed one upstairs.
Right. And we're like, hey, Golovkin's looking great. Kell Brook starts to return fire. He gets his composure. He starts landing some really good shots. And we're like, whoa, we expected him to land, but these shots look like they're, kind of doing something.
Now, after the fight, Golovkin said he didn't feel them. I'm calling BS. Because what I saw in that first round, Kell Brook got his wits about him after that left, tied him up, intelligently gathered himself and started to fire back. What was there? That uppercut. That right uppercut.
He lifted him off the canvas. I think it was like a minute or so left in the first round.
He landed that uppercut right under the guard of Golovkin and then hit him with 3 right hands around the guard that moved Golovkin along the ropes. Check it out if you don't believe me, but I don't care what anyone said. He felt them shots.
Yeah. And then he tied up.
Yep.
If you don't feel shots, you don't move out the way or tie up. You return fire. He did not return fire. He was like, yo, I need to stop this guy from hitting me. And Kell Brook had an awesome second round, throwing more combos. He had excellent feints. He was throwing what they call throwaway punches, where he would throw a hook that was intended to miss to get Golovkin to put his guard somewhere else, come with an uppercut or a hook somewhere else, or just a rapid fire combination, and they were landing. We expected them to land. He does have fast hands, and it seems that when Golovkin fights people with faster hands, they do land on him. I mean, that's common sense. People with fast, that's why they have fast hands.
But they had some pop on him as well. He wasn't feather fisted. It was a guy who could really at least land with solid punches. Maybe not concussive knockout power.
No.
Maybe not loading up, but they landed and he felt them. And it was interesting because with some of those punches, you could see Golovkin start to tire, suck in air, and he was following, not necessarily cutting off the ring like he normally does.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. It's 2 points. First off, there's a difference in feeling punches. Like, you can have a punch hit you, and maybe you just get a little buzz. Maybe, like, you hear the ringing going on. I don't think Golovkin, like, a lot of people think when they say hurt, like, totally discombobulated.
Right.
Like, there are levels to you feeling punches as well. Just like there are levels with pretty much everything in boxing. So, he might have been on the lower levels of feeling the punch. Like he felt the thump. He was moved by the punch, and he was like, oh, I can't get hit with too many of these. So, he starts to tie up, or he moves out the way. And secondly, like you said, he started to get off of the game plan. That's basically what happened. He begins to reach on Brook, which opened up a plethora of counter opportunities, which Brook took advantage of.
That's right.
Credit to him for doing that. And he also, like you said, because he was doing that, he abandoned his jab. He was walking straight in. His guard was not as closed as it could have been, which gave Brook opportunities to land. And even through all of that, he was still able to land the harder punches when he did land, and he was able to break his Kell Brook's orbital bone, which shows that we know he has power. He's not a Tommy Hearn, Deontay Wilder, or George Foreman type of puncher, but the guy packs a wallop. And Kell Brook, for the most part, was taking it pretty well. I mean, there's only so much you can do with a broken orbital bone, and we'll get into different scenarios about that as we get to the end of the fight. But speaking of the end of the fight, there's the rounds in between where Golovkin had abandoned the game plan. Kell Brook is looking great. Then the 5th round starts, and Abel Sanchez is like, hey, you're abandoning the game plan. Get back to the game plan. He goes in there. He goes behind the jab. He works Kell Brook to the ropes, and then works off hard combinations. And that is one of the reasons the fight was. One, Kell Brook told his corner that, hey, I'm not really able to see him that well, but I can go on. If Golovkin does not go back to the game plan, that fight is still going on because Kell Brook was being successful. And even at the point of the fight being stopped, Kell Brook was still fighting back and having success. But his corner, caring for him like they should, went ahead and threw in the towel. Now, originally I was like, oh man, come on.
If you saw my reaction video, I was very upset because I thought he could fight on, but as I rewatched the fight, you could see Kell Brook kind of tapping his eye throughout the second, third, and fourth round, which means there was some damage to it.
Right, the break happened in the second round. And you can fight on with that type of injury. It's possible. Kell Brook said he was going to do it, and we believe him. Paulie Malignaggi had his orbital bone broken versus Miguel Cotto in the second round. He ended up finishing that fight, but he had to take like a year and some change off afterward. His face looked like he had a cantaloupe in there. Antonio Margarito had his orbital bone broken versus Manny Pacquiao. He has not been the same since because his corner didn't stop the fight. The ref didn't stop the fight. Manny was trying to stop hitting him, but if he had stopped and given up, then he would have lost. So he had to keep on hitting him. And Margarito almost lost his eye because of that.
That's right.
So we have to remember as fans that these guys have lives outside of the ring. One commenter was saying, I think it was on your reaction video, that Kell Brook didn't have heart and blah, blah, blah. I was like, bro, sit down. Like, first off, he didn't quit. His corner threw in the towel for him. And then he was upset over it. And if he protested, they still not going to start the fight over. There's only one time I've seen them do that, and that was very strange when they did. And that was Kermit Cintron against, what's my man name? Sergio Martinez.
Yeah.
When he like adamantly protested that he got butted instead of hit with a punch, and he got counted out, and he complained so much that they went ahead and started the fight over. That's the only other time I've seen that happen. But 9.9999 times out of 10, the fight's over. So he can complain all he wants to. The fight is over. And like we said, he's young. He has a career ahead of him. He has life outside of boxing. So it was the right decision. As a fan, I was upset. As a coach, I was like, I probably would have done the same thing. Because if that's somebody that I've pretty much raised, he was with Dominic Ingalls since he was a child, since like 9 years old. That's a father figure to him. He taught him his, he basically raised him with his parents. I'm going to stop that fight.
Now, me on the other hand, I understand why he stopped the fight.
Yeah.
He was actually taking a few hits to that right side of his face where the orbital was broken with the left hook and with the jab. And it was a jab that he had been able to avoid early in the fight.
Right.
I personally think, and this is me, that Kell Brook should have at least been allowed the time to make it out the round. It was enough time. I can understand Golovkin is a big puncher, and he can target that eye if he thinks that it is broken or it is damaged. I personally, like I said, I think he should have at least been allowed to make it out the round and then discuss it in the corner without Dominic Ingalls having to throw in the towel.
Yeah, that's a plausible argument right there. And, you know, we don't know what could have happened from that point, but he did stop the fight, and Golovkin got the win. Now, did he look as great as he usually does? No. He looked, you know, pretty ordinary.
Pretty vulnerable.
Yeah. But at the same time, you have to respect that he was able to right the ship. He adjusted. He did what he needed to do to win. All fighters have bad nights. It happens. But what separates the good fighters from the great ones is how they adjust to those bad nights. Sugar Ray Leonard had bad nights. He had a bad night versus Duran. He ended up losing. He had a bad night versus Hearns. He adjusted and won. He rematched Duran and beat him. Floyd Mayweather has had bad nights. He had a bad night versus Castillo. He had a bad night versus Maidana the first time. He had 2 rematches. He settled the score. B-Hop has had bad nights. Roy Jones has had bad nights. You go down the line, every great fighter has had a bad fight.
But there's a positive out of this. Now that everyone has seen that Triple G is vulnerable, he has bad nights, what happens? Everyone wants to challenge Triple G now. Everyone wants a piece of Triple G. After the fight, who calls him out? Billy Joe Saunders, who has argued and complained and wants his things his way ever since he got the belt off of Andy Lee. He hadn't fought since December, if I'm not mistaken. And now he wants to come out and start calling Triple G out. Triple G said he wants Billy Joe Saunders next because he wants to unify the titles. But the WBA has now ordered
Golovkin and Jacobs.
Golovkin and Jacobs because they both own a piece of the WBA middleweight belt.
And I'm going to say the same thing I said earlier about Danny Jacobs. Until the names are on the contracts, I don't care what they have to say.
But that could be the same with Billy Joe Saunders.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
and
he's calling him out. You know, a lot of guys are calling him out.
Chris Eubanks Jr. is calling him out. The only one that hasn't called him out was Canelo.
Yeah, and that's because he has a fight, and he really doesn't care about Golovkin at all.
So, the good thing is, we might actually see him get to fight a middleweight.
Yeah.
That actually is going to make a good fight. They're considered more so B plus A level type fights, the people that we want to see him fight.
Yeah, like, if he beats those guys, he is essentially cleaned out the division. And really, after that, what more can you ask from the guy? Like, he's cleaned out the division. Then maybe some guys move up from 54 or he goes up to 68. You know, fans are never satisfied. But either way, like, that is, he's doing what you want him to do, which is fight.
Now, Kell Brook, on the other hand, has said that he's going to go down to 154. Right. After going up to 160 and being as high as 176, probably 180 pounds, going down to 147 to defend his
he has the IBF title.
IBF title might be a very tall order, and he's had several fights where he's had to fight over the 147-pound limit. Yeah. So I can see him dropping the belt. That will leave it to
Errol Spence fighting.
There's a guy whose name Constantine. I have to look it up. We'll put it
like Pomarev.
Pomarev. That's who it is. Which they probably would have fought for an eliminator anyway, eventually, after the Bundu fight. But they should be fighting for a vacant belt very soon.
Yeah.
Also, Kell Brook, there's plenty of challenges for him at 154.
Oh, yeah, that's a loaded division.
And could we see him versus Canelo? I would love to see that fight.
Yeah, when he makes one or so wins in that division, and yeah, he'll get a Canelo fight if Canelo doesn't move up to fight Golovkin.
No, he said he's gonna be at 154 for a while. I'm gonna hold him to that. I don't want to see him fight at 155, 156. He's gonna move up the middleweight.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I'll say we've been talking about this for way too long.
Let's move on to the
probably
next
hurt
fight.
a lot of feelings by saying that Gennady Golovkin was human. Oh my God, no! But
anyway, we're going to the next two undefeated fighters fighting at the 115-pound division.
Yes.
And that was Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez and Carlos the Prince Cuadras.
Yes, this fight was very good. If you saw our preview video, we said it would be. We said it would be the technical masterpiece to the savagery that was Kamagai Soto Caras. And
which was a good fight that ended out a knockout. And we saw some great things in that fight. You should take a watch if you haven't watched it yet.
Yeah, I was gonna, like, we were saying, you know, neither guy had defense and we weren't gonna see much defense, but we ended up seeing some defense from Kamagai. He showed some great defense. He rolled a lot of punches, which is an old school move. He blocked a lot of those body punches from Soto Caras that with his elbows, and he did a lot of, like I said, he did a lot of rolling. He did some feinting. He used body movement. It was a great performance from Kamagai that should get him another name at 154.
Now,
like I said, loaded division. Maybe he gets Kell Brook in his welcome fight to 154.
Which should be interesting because, like Cuadras and Chocolatito, he fights out of Taiken Promotions as Taiken Gym in Japan.
Yep. So watch that if you didn't see it. We're going to talk about the main event. Roman Gonzalez was moving up from 112. He's already been a champ at 105, 108, and 112. He was attempting to be the first Nicaraguan fighter to win belts in 4 divisions. In his way was a career-long, what was it, like, super flyweight? Yeah, super flyweight.
Junior bantamweight.
Yeah, I was like, which one do I want to use? It's both the same division. Either way. A full-time 115er. In Carlos Cuadras, and you could tell he did look bigger in the ring, but they've had a vast difference in competition. Whereas Gonzalez has been fighting the who's who of the little guys, Cuadras has been plying his trade almost in obscurity for the most part. But he showed on Saturday night that he's got the skills because he gave Gonzalez a hell of a fight, which we said he would.
And it was even better than we thought.
Yes. Both guys had excellent exchanges. There was lots of head movement, feints. There was great technique in the punches. That we had the variance of speed on the punches, feints. We had rolling of punches, blocking of punches, slipping of punches. Oh, I enjoyed it.
We even had some showboating from the Prince himself.
Yeah. I mean, he shined so many shoes in there that you think he's going to like the prom or something. He was doing a whole lot of shoe shining, and then he was effective with it. So you can't be mad at him. He throw a plethora of body shots, boom, uppercut, or boom, hook. And Gonzalez got caught with it very often. And then the only thing was he wasn't sitting on those punches.
That's right.
He wasn't, because he's a mover and he uses his feet as his defense, he was trying to get out of there so Gonzalez wouldn't counter him. But Gonzalez, being the great fighter that he is, he was still able to do it even when he was moving. So the shots gave the impression that he was being moved, and he was landing the harder shots. There was a difference in the sound of Cuadras' punches versus the sound of Gonzalez when they landed. His had a more solid sound to his landed punches than Cuadras. There was more of a slapping sound. He wasn't slapping with his punches. He wasn't getting the follow through that Gonzalez was because Gonzalez was sitting on his punches.
That's right.
It was a very competitive fight, very entertaining fight, and at the end of the day, Gonzalez walks away with his 4th title. Congratulations to him. Is there anything you want to add about the fight?
I think it was a great fight. If you watch how Chocolatito fights, he uses upper body movement very well to kind of make those blows glance off him, and he explodes very well from a low position.
Yes, he makes full use of the kinetic chain.
Also, he could definitely cut off the ring. He forces you to fight. Cuadras is just not going to be able to fight from the outside. He did well from the outside especially when he established that jab, because I've seen him land 2 to 3 jabs at a time, and then
work in his combination.
The Chocolatito just explodes out of anywhere, turns his body, dips to both sides, and can land those hard, thudding punches.
Yep.
And bringing so much pressure, it showed the more effective aggression on the scorecards.
Yes. So that's why you had a different variance of the scorecards. One judge had 9, one judge had 8, one judge had 7. They were very tough rounds to score because, like we said, Cuadras was very successful in there. You could tell by the Roman Gonzalez's face afterwards.
Or during, if you watched it, looked at his face before he started the round, it was like, what more do I have to do to get this guy out of here? I'm hitting him with everything I can.
Yes. And like a champ should, he kept hitting him. And Cuadras didn't go down without a fight. He was like, look, if you go take my belt, you gonna have to take my belt. And you gonna have to come through some fire to get it. You gonna get the best that I got. And he gave him the best that he got. So we have to tip our hats to both guys, as whatever hat you wear when you watch fights. Personally, I wear 3 hats when I watch a fight. Fan, fighter, and coach. I've done all 3. So I look at it from all those angles. And sometimes they conflict. A lot of times they do conflict because you get different views depending on which hat you're wearing. And, as a coach, I'm like, yeah, these guys doing some great technical stuff. This guy should do this guy should do that. As a fan, I'm just like, more. And then as a fighter, I'm like, shit, I don't think I want to be in there with that, because you got to be in some great condition to take what they took and to be able to give it back. It's just like, hey, you got to respect that.
Now, I hope Gonzalez's fight with Cuadras. His past fights was Juan Francisco Estrada, Brian Valoria, and McWilliams Arroyo. Give the little guys more recognition, and we can see them on television even more often, because these guys can scrap. And
Yes.
we deserve to see people who can scrap.
Yes, we need to see people who can scrap. And I think that tide is starting to turn, because you're even seeing it in MMA. They're putting a lot of emphasis on the smaller divisions, especially like in the UFC. Like Demetrius Johnson is getting a lot of shine now because he's basically the best pound for pound MMA fighter, and he's 125 pounds. The rise of Ronda Rousey, she fights at 135. She was headlining main events. So the little guys are starting to get their shine. And then, like, this was, I think, the 4th time we've seen Roman Gonzalez on HBO.
That's right.
And they're aiming for a unification with him and Naya Inoue,
Which is going to be a
Japan.
great fight.
Yes. And that's going. They have no choice but to put that one on TV. So,
And I think he's with Tyken as well.
yeah, it's going to be an easy fight to make, and that's probably going to be next. Cuadras can probably get one win and then get a rematch or get the winner of that fight. He is a player in that division. He was a long-time title holder. I think he had the belt for about he won the belt in 2010. And he made like 7. This was his 8th defense.
I thought he got it from Conception.
No, he defended it first. He won it like 2010.
Gotcha.
Versus a Thai fighter.
Okay.
You know, the guys who fight with their last name.
Yeah.
It's like Song Chai something. Sorry, I cannot remember the name exactly.
He probably wasn't going to pronounce it right anyway.
He's right. But it's neither here nor there. But like I said, he is a player in the division, so he'll probably be on TV the next time he fights too. So the little guys are getting their shine, as they should, and that's really all I got for this one. So thanks for watching. Make sure you hit the like button. Thank you. Make sure you subscribe. Thanks again. And we'll see you guys in the next video, where you'll either be watching us preview the Canelo fight or talking about UFC 203. So subscribe so you can get those videos, and we'll see you then. Peace.
This is round 1 and you've already lost. They don't seem to see that everything we've done is come at a cost. My fists are on fire, I perform till I perspire. My demons are in a rage, keep thinking that it's a game. I kick crime, hurricane, I told them I don't play, I'm liquid.
Black Street Fighter.